Hey church, it's so good to be joining you wherever you are around the world. Perhaps you're in one of our locations, maybe one of our Firestarter churches. Perhaps you're joining us from home. It's great to have you here. If you are a regular Freedomite, you'll notice this is a bit different. There's 4 of us because we got the Copox with us here.
Look at them.
Come on, fresh from South Africa. But if you're new here, normally this kind of part of our event, you'd be hearing from one of us. We'd be digging into what God's saying because we're in the middle of this series called This Is Us. And it's all about the power and the potential of our relationships. We've been talking about friendship. We've been talking about getting ready for like a romantic relationship.
I like that one.
We're talking about parenting. That's been amazing. Come on.
Real.
You know,
That's real life.
How many children do we have between us?
9.
9.
9
That is,
children.
we have 9 children between us. This is crazy. But today we're going to be having a conversation together as friends, as couples, as leaders within our church, because you know, about now in most of our locations is a year anniversary.
Anniversary?
Anniversary is.
Sounds like a party.
Do you want to call it an anniversary? I don't know. But we're getting up to that 12-month mark of this whole global pandemic and it impacting and changing our lives. And it's been a stretch and it's been challenging. And we really believe as a leadership team that whilst we cannot wait for this to be over, and we are praying that that will come quicker than we even think it can, that there's something that God wants for us to get out of this season, why He's allowed us to go through this, and particularly in some of our really important relationships, like our marriages, our friendships, our relationships with church, people, and you know, all those different things. So, you know, Kris and Naomi, you're just back from South Africa?
Yeah.
Come on, how's it being back?
Cold, muddy, great.
And if you've never been to the UK before, cold, muddy, great advert for
Muddy,
our
so
tourism.
muddy.
Yeah, definitely. We've been staying on social media where friends in Cape Town keep posting pictures of beautiful sunsets, of the seaside, of Table Mountain.
The beach that's now open.
Yeah, very, very different. But it is good to be here.
You know, so you guys, like, you spent most of this global pandemic in South Africa. What was that like for you guys?
Yeah, well, I think it was very similar to the rest of the world to a greater or lesser extent, because I think we've all had experience of being locked down.
Yeah.
We've all had experience of the rules changing, getting tighter, getting slacker, getting tighter again. And so it's very similar to that. I think it was an especially tough lockdown for South Africa. So
Yeah. And I think we appreciated that because there was real clarity. Like the government brought very clear, very strong, immediate. Like if they brought something new in, it was from midnight that night, and so it was very clear.
Yeah. But also we found that for a period of time we weren't able to leave our home to exercise, so you're kind of locked in. And probably at the end of the day, we've all had the same experience, haven't we? We've seen a lot of a few people, unless you live on your own, and not very much or nothing of most of the people that we like to hang out with or be in relationship with, which has been incredibly challenging, I think, if we were honest, at times on both fronts.
Yeah.
It's been really intense, you know, being in the home together, working from home, homeschooling, all of that. But it's also been really stretching, not actually having time to be with people.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's in those moments that you build relational equity and you know you gain so much from that. So very similar to lots of parts of the world, particularly tough at points.
I think you have to find those ways of being creative as a couple because you know there's no other great friends sat around the table enjoying a glass of wine with you. So it's like, babe, you've got me again for another night.
Scrabble it is.
And so we had a lot of fun, but we had to find those ridiculous, silly things that we thought, we never
Did you guys do lockdown haircuts?
Yes, in fact, I thought that when we packed the cutters, I hoped and prayed that I wouldn't have to use them again, but apparently I do an okay job.
We're never going back. We are never, I don't know about you guys, but particularly for the men, sitting in that queue at the barbers for about an hour, because I always manage to turn up at the barbers when there are 17 other people already there. It's like, it ain't gonna happen. Naomi does a great job, certainly for me anyway, I don't mind.
What have you guys found has been like the most stretching thing for your marriage, for your relationship through this season?
Great question. I mean, I think I would go back to what I was saying about the fact that we've had a lot of intense time in home and, you know, and then very little physical relational interaction with other people. And so, you know, at a time when all the news headlines are negative, where kids can't go to school, you are literally locked in. I think it creates pressure in the home.
Definitely.
I have to say, we honestly enjoyed some of the intensity of the time together. It was amazing family time for us with our kids. We had time with them that we probably wouldn't under normal circumstances have had.
Yeah.
But I also recognise there were definitely tension moments. And especially, I would say for us, the tension was in the absence of other relationships, so not seeing people, not having time to invest relationally with people. And so you sort of strip out the texture from relationships, and interactions become very digital, don't they? Very kind of Zoom-based, social media-based. And whilst those things are amazing provision, have been amazing in the past season, they're not the same.
No.
And so I think that it feels like, we've really missed building with people. At the end of the day, we're relational beings. The Bible says, don't forsake the gathering together of believers. And we can think of that as a religious instruction, but I actually think it's a relational instruction. Definitely. It's about don't neglect being together, having time together, spending time together. And that's the thing that's hardest.
Absolutely. I also think if there's just the two of you, you're kind of each other's pressure valve in those pressure cooker moments. It is harder 24/7 to not let it out at each other, because that's all you've got. And it is the most precious relationship. You almost let your guard down a little bit because of the intimacy in a relationship. But that means you can take it out on the person who you should not take it out on most, because you're actually in it together. And you recognise that in marriage, actually it's us two together, we get through it. Against each other, obviously it just then becomes a mess.
I think the pressure for me revealed some of the ways of thinking and living that I thought were okay, but actually were just masked by busyness or social life or my job. And so actually when you take away some of that and you take away the distraction, all the small talk with friends, all the coffees, take that away, and I suddenly start to see some of my own bad habits or ways of thinking. One of the things for me that it really revealed, and then played out in how I interacted with you or with the children in the lockdown and in the pressure, was the idol of productivity. That I actually love achieving, and I love when the house is clear, and when the kids have done all their work that their teachers have set, and when I've done my work list, and when I've done everything that Dave would love me to do, the things that he values around the home. And actually when your productivity is taken away from you because there's such an intense environment, the feeling of failure for me, and the feeling of, well, I'm not a good mum, and I'm not a good wife, and I'm a rubbish teacher, and I'm terrible at my job, and I'm not on top of that, and have I texted my friends? I found that incredibly overwhelming. And I think sometimes it was tension with us. Sometimes it was just the fight not to be sad, or the fight not to feel overwhelmed, but also just becoming numb to it's not going to change, I'm not going to change, and so it was less of a fight. We obviously had our moments, let's be real, but I think I had to fight in me the pull towards negativity and the pull towards the feeling of failure, which ultimately really was, actually I have to find joy in the smaller things and the more beautiful, simple things of life, rather than the achievements and the tasks and the perfect home. Not that we ever have that, but I'm doing this, and look, I'm doing all these nice things for people. And when that's gone, it's a revealer of where do I put my identity?
I love what you're saying, Saz, about the simple things, the small things, because we, like lots of people, have had intense moments across the course of the past year, and having to consistently retreat back to a place not of negativity and heaviness, but to counter that with actually simple things like gratitude, because there's always something to be grateful for, and celebration. And we've definitely in those conversations noticed that it's you can get drawn down into the place of negativity, but actually no, we're going to take the high ground of celebration and gratitude and thanksgiving to God, and joy and laughter. I mean, there have been moments where we've put on, comedy clips on YouTube to get laughter back into our house, or we've wrestled with the kids and had lots of fun rolling around on the floor. Why? To get laughter back in the house, because it's such a powerful antidote to kind of the prevailing sense of discouragement. And I really think that you're talking, Dave, about there needs to be healing in relationships between us, and I really think that's true, but I also think that healing has to start within us as well. Because I can certainly relate to relationships that have been stretched over the last year, that I need to continue to return to and make sure within me that there's forgiveness and that there's healing in that as well. So many people have had to wrestle with bereavement over the last year. And we've got people wrestling, and even in our church today, we've got people wrestling with bereavement, But then there's also a sense that you go online, you read online, people are talking about it's all a big hoax. You know, that the pain that creates for somebody who's buried a member of their family that's beloved to them, and somebody else saying it's not real anyway. You know, just this kind of stuff, we can't just ignore it and move on. There has to be a kind of a moment to engage with what's gone on inside of us, and to allow the Spirit of God to bring healing and restoration to the inside of us, because it flows from that place outward into our other relationships. And my contention would be, even for the healthiest person amongst us, life today involves difficult conversations, relational stretches, difficult circumstances, health issues that create baggage, and that baggage can often be a spiritual baggage that you have to engage with. And so I think for us it's about taking time to allow the Holy Spirit to reveal what that is, the relationship that's stretched and needs healing, the place that you've gone to, you know, in the dark moments, the things that you've spoken over yourself or believed, the narratives of the enemy that you've engaged with and got within yourself that needs, you know, confessing, or agreement needs to be broken, or repentance needs to happen. I think it's such an important thing. And I would say that certainly last year I noticed the temptation in my own life, and I witnessed it in other people's lives as well, to almost to regress in terms of their journey with the Lord. And what I mean by that is, understandably surrounded by pressure, I think we gave some ground that we'd taken historically. So returning to a past practice or a past behavior that wasn't God's best. You know, maybe it was that critical attitude or spirit, maybe it was that sense of wanting to lean out of relationship and not engage with people, lean out of church and community. Maybe it was an addiction, whatever it was. I saw people almost having taken strides in their journey over past years to return to that place. So the person that had gone from, you know, being in a highly negative relationship that brought damage to their life, and they would recognize this and say this, in the midst of the pandemic, retreating back to that relationship, or returning to that, maybe that pornography addiction that they'd broken free of and through accountability had distance on, returning to that. I think God wants to fast track us in taking that ground again. And that's so important for us and for our families and for our walk with Him. So it is about having that time with Him, creating room for the Holy Spirit. If you're married, doing it together, mapping it out, working through it, praying through it. I don't think there's a precise sort of prescription for how you have to do it. I think it's about an honest conversation between you and God, sharing of heart, being real with Him, being quick to own things, operating in humility, saying, God, that wasn't your best, that's not what you would say of me. I don't want to live that way. I want to escape this stuff and break this stuff and move forward. And I think we have to do that.
And what I love about what you're saying there, Kris, is that we've got heroes in the Bible that took backward steps. So if you feel like, yeah, oh man, I lost ground. Like I took 3 steps forward and I've taken 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward and I've taken 3 steps back, then you're in the company of the Apostle Peter. You know, like let's think about this person that Jesus said, I'm going to build the church on this individual. You know, he's like going on with God, and he gets the revelation, you're the Christ. And then this is the guy that denies Jesus, even though Jesus tells him you're going to die. He literally gets a heads up about this and still fails. And then you see him in this turmoil and this like pain. And yet what does Jesus do? Just, you know, after he rises again, he comes and restores him. And like you said, fast tracks. We just want to speak faith to you, church, because if you have lost ground, just like Peter, Jesus wants to come in with a redemptive work, not just to, I'll bring you back up. Actually, I want to fast track, and then I want to use you and I'll build my kingdom upon you. So I just really want to speak that, whatever it is, it might be in your marriage, in yourself. If you feel like you've lost ground, say, I'm in good company, because I'm also in the company of a king that fast tracks people with the right heart. It's so important.
It's so powerful. And the thing that we've got to remember is this isn't about some heavy, soul-searching, deep, painful conversation with God. It's about being real with God. So I think if we were honest, we've all lost ground in some area, in some way. You know, just as a comparison, I worked personally very hard to get my fitness up before lockdown. COVID comes along, you're locked in your house. You give ground in that area in the same way that I gave ground in my physical health. You know, there's mental health issues and emotional health issues and spiritual elements that can lose ground as well. But as we go to God on that, we discover who God is again. And the Bible says He's gracious and compassionate and slow to anger and abounding in love. And so when we go to Him, not only do we attend to the baggage, we're transformed by the power of His personality and the intensity of His love for us. And I think that's an amazing thing.
Within this season, some of us have lent in and some of us have lent out. And some of us have lent out of church because we found doing church digitally really stretching. But actually, when you lean out, that's not the best place to come and take that ground back. You know, you've actually got to lean in. Even if we go back to the Peter example, in this moment, even though he'd failed, the second he heard that it was Jesus on the shore, he jumps out of the boat, swims. He literally got back in close proximity. So if there's distance, like with church relationship, get back, be here on Sunday, get back into your group. If it's in your marriage, get back, get date night back. If it's fitness, get back in the gym or get back on a run. Get back. This has been stretching, and there's things we've got to attend to, baggage we've got to deal with, you know, these different things we've got to repent for, forgive, all those kind of things. But actually, like H said a couple of weeks, there's been a ton of people that have done that a lot better than they thought they have, especially like our homeschooling parents and different things. And we also like want to recognize that actually there's been some strengths we've discovered in this season as well. It's like it's stretched, it's been testing, but actually we need to be intentional about taking the strengths we've discovered and carrying them into you know, the rest of normal life. So what are some of the strengths you think, like whether it's personally or you see in other people? What about you, Naomi?
I've definitely loved seeing people creating habits and memories. I think it dawned on us, our children are growing up, and actually if they leave home the same age as we did, we've gone over 50% of the way through that with with our eldest. And that's a little bit scary. And so having that extra time, we chose to, especially in those tough days where homeschool wasn't necessarily a joy, I was reminding myself and her that it was actually, no, this was precious time, precious memories. And then from the back of that, you know, then seeing other people inspired by other people as well, like creating those memories, doing things together. We've, since moving back to the UK, you know, we've embraced the mud and we've been out in the dark, wrestling the kids, making them laugh like crazy, getting completely covered from head to toe and making memories. I mean, who does that by the moonlight on every night? It's, you know, the gift of COVID.
You're so right. Like last summer, we had a couple of moments where it was just like we did stuff that we wouldn't normally do. And we would I remember we stayed up late one night just looking at the stars. Like we used to do that all the time when we were dating. How can people take some of those things and not lose them when we really get back to this?
I think it's always keeping in focus what's over this time has actually really mattered. So it's been the whole, when you choose your battles, you know, there's certain subjects, for using the homeschool analogy, there's certain subjects that I know I can teach my kids. There's others that, you know, we'll get through it and your teachers are going to help you at some point. Or another mum friend will, you know, pitch in, and Zoom calls are great. But it's that remembering what actually really mattered in relationships, not just with our kids, not just with each other, but also what mattered most with, you know, with our relationships in church, with our relationships with friends and other family, what mattered most, what are we celebrating from those things, and continue being intentional about continuing those things.
I think picking up on that, I think I have a greater appreciation for relationship now than I perhaps did before. I've always been quite relational in a way, but I think we went through a number of really stretching moments over the last year where we personally felt quite low and quite discouraged. And what we noticed in those moments is we reached out to the Jonathans to our David, or the David to our Jonathans, the people that were close. And we had time with them, and it restored us, it refreshed us, it strengthened us. It was like fuel for the fight. And there was just something about the season, you know, this past season has we've seen all the extremes, and it showed the extreme of the power of positive relationship to be such a good thing. And I think I would say, you know, there's definitely a narrative in my mind at times that it's like, actually, you're an introvert, you can do it on your own, just, you know, lean out. At times I go to that place, and I see other people do it as well. I just think that that's not true. That's not God's best. God made us to be relational people, and the Bible's full of incredibly close and rich relationships that bring life. And so for me, I think it's like wanting to go into the season ahead actually valuing those relationships more and treasuring those relationships. And the opposite is also true, recognizing perhaps in the polarizing, the extreme nature of the past year, you've also seen perhaps some relationships that don't do that. We can't write those relationships out of our lives, but we do have to manage those relationships in a healthy way as well, so that actually, you know, we're building healthy, positive, encouraging relationships, because we all need that in our lives. And if you're somebody that's that's lent out in this past season, just really encourage you to lean in again. You know, it's like lean in, reconnect, re-engage, because it will bring something rich to your life.
I think for us, like one of the things we found over time is that it comes also down to discipline. So like, I know even like going back to early days of married life, you know, you think that romance and those things happened, you know, just as ad hoc, you know, naturally. But we found that actually it was only when we really disciplined in date night that you really saw a healthy consistency of some of those things. And so I think like even with things like the memory making, I know for us, we're gonna start to like structure that into our diary, like even into our budget. Like I wanna say this to like the dads out there. I know that there are dads in our church. You've been more engaged with your kids. You've been more adventurous with your kids. You've been more present with your kids. And some of us, because that's true of me, we haven't needed to spend money on certain things because, you know, we haven't had to do it. And so we did buy our kids that extra. You bought a Lego set.
I did, Dave. I did. I made a Lego model the week before Pastor G said, you know, grow up and stop making models.
Fantastic. Like I went, like, you know, one of some of our best friends are Andy and Emrat as our campus pastors in Cheltenham, and you know, at a time that we were able to, I took my kids over to their house, and Andy had literally gotten a hose pipe, stabbed it like about 100 times, attached it to the top of the trampoline, and then the kids got on the trampoline, turned it on, he was like, memories. And I love that creativity, but I just want to say, like, some of us, like within our budgets, our time, we need to discipline it in.
Can I add into that? I think the other thing I've found with my friendships and my family and with you is because you haven't had the stereotypical ways of being relational. Let's go to a restaurant and have a meal. Let's go and have a coffee with my eights. Let's go eat some donuts. They're like the stereotypical ways that I would spend time with people. I do love
donuts.
Donuts are in there.
Donuts.
Honestly, especially donuts new. I can't wait. I've got my favourite place. I'm going to take you when we're allowed. You've had to find other ways. So, you know, we've done more post. We've sent letters and cards, and we've taught our children to be relational in other ways. We've had more creative date nights. Let's eat under the stars. Baking, cooking, you know, there's new foods. There's like creative ways of like being with each other that we have been restricted from our stereotypes, and it's caused a new way of being relational that's beautiful and different. And I think with my friends and with you, I want to keep that going. I want to keep that like, oh, we don't know what we're going to do. We can't go here, here, and here. Okay, what can we do?
I asked Pastor G recently, you know, me and him were having a conversation, and I said, G, how do you actually make sure that you change? And he literally said, I write it down. I write down. If I observe something about myself, I write it down, and then I go through it later. I pray through it. So I want to ask you, like, what strengths have you discovered? What things have you done differently that have been positive that you literally need to write down, and then add this question, how am I going to continue this?
And put a diary reminder.
Yeah, I think it's so important.
So good, mate. I was just thinking that I think one of the simplest relational things that we can do that is powerfully transformational is send people kind words.
100%.
You know, just kind and encouraging. We've been so blessed moving here from South Africa. There are a number of people that have consistently, I'm going to do a shout out to the Gees in Cape Town.
Come on, Team Gees.
Who are an incredible couple who consistently send us love and encouragement. And it's been so challenging to me because it's so easy for us to neglect that in our relationships. But there's something about a simple, kind, encouraging, you know, word, a thought, a message. You know, we're so quick, aren't we, to hammer out our views on social media. But in the hidden place, the secret place, the quiet place, are we sending that love and encouragement? I just think when we do that, and let's be honest, our world needs so much more of that 100%. Than the other right now. You know, if we just like overdosed on encouragement and kindness in this season, talk about healing, talk about transformation, talk about restoration, all those things would happen.
Yeah, and I think like in church relationships, we see this a lot as leaders, don't we? Where as soon as you lose sight of what you're grateful for, it not only you lose sight of it, it obscures your view of other things. And I think if you, in the context of church, if you've lent out, just start remembering, what am I grateful for? What has God done through the ministry of freedom? What's God done through my campus pastor? You start musing on that, it's so much healthier for
and your
you.
marriage. I'm sorry, you have to do that in your marriage as well, especially when you've been through the stressful strain. I think you can habitually, it takes 21 days to create a habit. Well, we've had 365 days of creating habits.
Oh my goodness.
And so there will be habitual ways of thinking about each other as married couples that have been, provoked by the pandemic, but you have to change and you have to alter those ways of thinking and forgive one another and repent. And I know that I have to really work on some of the things that I've begun to think in my head and just get rid of them a bit.
Well, one of the strengths I think we've developed as people as a whole is we've got more real with each other. So I have had less surface conversations. Hey, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine. How are you? Yeah, fine. Great. Even with certain friends and family, even some of my Faith for Five. Actually, I've had some of the best gospel conversations because this has been a season where we haven't just been surface. No. And I think for me, that's one of the things that I want to continue. I want my friendships to be deep. I want my friendships to be real. I want, we've done that a lot with the kids, around the dinner table. So I think that's one of the strengths of this season, particularly for geezers, I was about to say, for men. I think it's such a key thing. What were you going to say?
Come on, mate. I was just going to say, I think I'm just reminded of our small groups in church. And I just want to do a big shout out to all of our small group leaders, because I think our small group leaders, I've certainly seen week after week after week after week, small group leaders turning up to lead small groups. And it's different when you lead a small group because you can't just take the week off because you don't feel like it. You have to make it happen. But I was just going to say as well, I think God's put us in those relational environments. It's an amazing place to practice some of what we're talking about today. And I think it's easy for us, especially, small groups have been online, Zoom. I mean, honestly, it's not the same and nobody's pretending it is, but it's easy for us to say, I don't get a lot from groups, so I don't engage with it. That's not really what groups is about. It's not about what you can get from it, although there's always something to get from it.
Absolutely.
It's also about what you bring to it.
100%.
And again, I think if we flip our perspective and say, actually, I'm going to bring encouragement and I'm going to bring love and I'm going to make that hour on Zoom a really encouraging hour. We certainly saw in Cape Town some amazing groups happening because people had that mentality. And so I just lean into groups, get stuck into groups. Because, at the end of the day, God's put us, and one of the things I love about groups is I love the variety within our groups as well. Because people sometimes will say, if I'm honest, the people in my group aren't necessarily people I would hang out with. No, that's called the church, isn't it? I mean, that's called the church. It's why we're in these environments. Because in lots of other areas of life, we self-select, but it's more like family that way. And I think that's so powerful.
Come on, it is so good. I heard a fascinating statistic that it was a survey taken, I think in America, and it said that every single people group, bar one, had experienced disproportionate issues with their mental health. Now, it's not to say that this other group didn't have challenges, but this one group were disproportionately less affected, and that group was people who regularly attended church. There is something, I think we have got to have a fresh gratitude level to God first and foremost, to our leaders and to one another for this incredible thing we've had. Most people have gone through this with immediate family on their own, and we've had the church. It's such an incredible thing. So guys, as we wrap up, if this is like the one last opportunity, you've got to speak into people and the different relationships that we're talking about through this conversation, and say one thing to them as this season hopefully closes out over the next 6 to 12 months. What would it be?
Come on, Dave, such a great question. We're better off together.
Come on.
Whatever the last seasons look like for you, whether you've lent in or lent out, we are better off together. So get stuck in, lean in, engage. God's got so much more for us together.
Come on.
I think mine would be God reveals to heal. So anything he's revealed in this season, in the challenge and the pressure and the stretch, he reveals it because he wants to heal it. And most, if not all people heal in a hospital community or they heal in community. So I think that healing happens with people and it happens in community.
What about you, Naomi?
I think gratitude. Gratitude is the antidote to the inward kind of almost the whole it's okay for them, but what about me kind of thing that internal dialogue that can happen, I think, gratitude. I say it to our kids all the time, there's always something to be grateful for, and there really, really is. And with gratitude comes joy. And I actually have learned to see joy as a weapon, because actually joy is something you take ground with. It's something you can choose. You don't necessarily feel it first, you choose it, you take it, you own it. So good. And that then makes you even more grateful.
Love it. And church, I think the final thing we want to say is that we all believe and have experienced and know that our God is a restorer. Amen. And he's not a restorer to half measure of what was. He always exceeds. He always exceeds. And so if this, whatever area, if this is a season where you have lost, we need to have an expectation of restoration. We need to have an expectation of resurrection. And there's something that, as we go through these next 6 to 12 months, however long it is in your particular nation, these are things that are going to help you deal with some of the wounds and the issues of the last season. It's going to be some of the stuff that's going to help us get those strengths out of it. And so whatever it is, maybe it's dealing with the baggage, whether it is disciplining into your life some of these great things that we've done differently. What are you going to do this week? Whether it is groups or barbarians or she, this week's going to be an incredible opportunity to take this and action it in your lives. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to hand it back over to our hosts. Stay safe. We love you, church.